If there's one thing that Glock has proven with their release of the Gen 5 Glock 19, it's that they are the Apple of the gun world. Essentially, take a design that is admittedly very good, make incremental changes, and in some cases make regressive changes, and then market it as revolutionary. Now, in all fairness, marketing by its very nature is borderline, if not outright, hyperbolic. So when I saw this picture floating around the interwebs, I chuckled to myself at the notion that Glock has raised the bar with their new Gen 5. What they did was create a Gen 4S and then sold it as a new generation because they know they could. And they were right. Because I wasn't going to buy this gun. I only bought it because I got so many requests from people wanting me to talk about it. And I'm never at a loss for a reason to buy a new gun. In all my years of dating, none of my girlfriends ever noticed when I got a haircut. They just knew I looked a little cleaner, even sexier and more edible, but didn't exactly know why. This was the case when I first saw the Gen 5 Glock 19 in person. It looked leaner, cleaner, sexy-ish, because Glocks aren't exactly sexy to begin with, and I didn't quite know why until I took a closer look. First, there's this NDLC finish they're using on the slide. I like it. I like it a lot. The finish on the previous Gen 4 Glocks were kind of a dud to me. They were a mix of black, gray, and ashiness. Yes, the same type of ashiness that plagued my hands in my gun review videos. But since people want to shame me and try to pull my black card for my persistent ashiness,
black cocoa butter. Please. You are doing African Americans a disservice everywhere. User in something. You are.
I made sure I had the cocoa butter on deck for this video. I'm not getting paid for this endorsement, but if anyone at Palmer's is watching, I'm open to the idea. The Gen 5 NDLC finish is a deeper, richer black with just enough sheen to give it a vibrant appearance without becoming blingy. Essentially, it's a satin black. The frame and the slide, however, are not the same finish. The finish on the frame, if you can call it a finish, is also black but doesn't have the same depth as the slide. It creates a contrast that I like. Having the slide and frame the same color would be too intense for my eyes. I love blacked out cars, but I hate when it's a gloss black or an all matte black. I like the slight contrast of satin black and gloss black when paired together much better, the same way I like the contrast color of the Gen 5 Glock. After the color of the slide, the next thing you notice is the flared magwell. Personally, I've never looked at my Gen 3 or Gen 4 Glocks and thought, damn Glock, can a brother get a flared magwell? I never really cared, but I get it. I'd rather have a slightly flared magwell than not. My ability to change magazines doesn't seem noticeably faster, but I can't argue with science. It's going to be easier and faster shoving a mag in a flared magwell versus a non-flared magwell. Visually, I like it because it gives the Glock a touch of definition that gives the gun an extra bit of presence. Along with the flared magwell, Glock included a frame cut at the bottom of the grip and increased floor plate on the bottom of the magazine. I'm a little torn about this. Yes, it makes it easier to strip a stubborn magazine that refuses to drop free when I'm doing my fancy, super fast, high-speed, low-drag reloads, but I can feel the cutout with my pinky, and it kind of irritates me because it interrupts with the consistency of the grip. It isn't a big deal, but it does incite my OCD enough to notice it. I've never had a problem stripping a magazine from any of the older Glocks, so I'd likely go without it if I could. Just like the flare magazine well, the cutout definitely doesn't make it harder to strip a magazine, so I won't go so far as to say I don't like it. But to my pinky, it's a minor annoyance. Speaking of magazines, this is where things get a little interesting. So, not too long ago, Magpul came out with their version of the Glock magazine, distinguishing itself by having an orange follower versus the customary black follower on OEM Glock magazines. I like the PMag Glock magazines, but I like the OEM versions better. Nonetheless, I find it funny that Magpul came out with their version of the Glock mag with the orange follower, and now Glock comes out with a new version of their own mag with the Glock follower that's orange. It's like Magpul and Glock are playing a game of tactical horse, and it's mildly funny. Either way, there's nothing proprietary about the Gen 5 magazines. All previous generation mags will work as well as the Magpul mags. I really don't want to do this, but I have to give Glock props for listening to their customers by removing the finger grooves. Personally, I have hands that are slightly bigger than that of hobbits, so the finger grooves on previous generations work perfectly with my hands. However, I constantly hear people complaining about the finger grooves because their fingers end up sitting on top of the ridges of the grooves instead of the grooves themselves. So I get it, but then I don't, because you can always remove finger grooves if you don't like them, but you can't exactly put finger grooves back on if you want them. So I'm positive the Gen 7s will have finger grooves, just less prominent, and they'll call that revolutionary. In so many words, it's a marketing. Glock decided to show all the weirdo left-handed shooters of the world some love by making the Glock fully ambidextrous, by adding a slide lock to the other side of the gun. I write with my left hand, but I shoot with my right, so it made no difference to me, or so I thought. I always had a problem finding the slide lock when I was trying to use it as a slide release, and I didn't want to add an extension to the slide lock, as I have a tendency to ride the slide lock, causing my gun to not lock back on the last shot. Also, sometimes trying to drop the slide using the slide release was a bitch, as some guns required a ton of pressure before disengaging. I remember when there was a time where polygonal rifling was all the rage. Glock boasted about their polygonal barrels like they were forged inside of Mount Olympus. With the Gen 5, they switched to a more traditional rifling, which makes you scratch your head and wonder, it's a marketing again? They say it's more accurate. I did all my shooting with this gun on steel because I'm basic and I like noise, so I can't say that I saw improved accuracy. Either way, it still makes me scratch my head a little bit. Okay, at this point I'm just delaying the inevitable. So what is the trigger like? If I'm gonna go purely based on how it feels when I dry fire it, it feels like the internals are sitting in a batch of pig grease. It's just squishy. The stock triggers on previous generations were not that bad, and sometimes we found some that were really good. Now, I was all ready to just throw the Glock Gen 5 trigger under the bus, and then I shot it. And then I shot it again to make sure that what I was feeling wasn't a fluke. And it wasn't. When I dry fired the Gen 5, I legitimately hated the trigger. But when I actually shot the gun, I dare say I really like it. It's not my ideal type of trigger, but if I had to live with it, I wouldn't complain. It still doesn't have a solid wall, still doesn't have a super crisp break, but it's definitely a lot smoother and it's noticeable when you're live firing it. In conclusion, the Gen 5 Glock is not revolutionary. I repeat, it is not revolutionary. If you don't own a Glock and money isn't an issue, and you want to know what Glock to buy, I'd say grab a Gen 5. If you have multiple Glocks and you want to know if it's worth getting the Gen 5, yes, if you're a tactical hype beast that just has to have the latest. Or if you absolutely can't stand finger grooves on previous generations. If you have a Glock already and you're not a tactical hype beast, you really honestly don't have a reason to get the Gen 5. You'll be just fine with all the previous generations.
Before you go, I want to tell you about the new online store, shop MrColionNoir.com. Here you can grab your favorite pieces from the Pew Pew Life, Ammosexual, and the new Colion Noir line. You guys have been asking for the CN logo hats for a while now, and now they're here. I'm also really excited about the line of tumblers and water bottles that I've added to the store as well. Now you can show your pride for the lifestyle we all love and stay hydrated all at the same time. So click the first link in the description box and grab your gear today. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.